Hi, I'm Joe Walensky. I'm the principal of Walensky and Associates, and we're happy to be putting on Writers UA East for Content Pros in Raleigh, North Carolina, October 4th and 5th in cooperation with the Department of English at North Carolina State University. And I have the fun job of talking with many of our speakers. So today I'm speaking with Jake Campbell. Hello, Jake. How are you doing today?
Hi, I'm doing great.
I'm talking from downtown Seattle. Where are you speaking to us from?
I'm out in RTP, just outside of Durham, North Carolina.
Well, for people who may not be familiar with you, why don't you talk a little bit about your background and the type of work that you're involved in?
So this is actually my first job working kind of in tech comms or the associated industry. Um, I actually started out working for my college as a software QA tester for online courses that we were developing, and I moved to developing course content for that because while I was at UNCG, I was majoring in English and classical studies education. So they had me on to, help develop courses and kind of bring like a software testing kind of mind to the courses that they were developing. I worked there for a while, and then I managed to get a job as a software QA tester with a small game development company in Cary, North Carolina. And, after finally getting out of that, I managed to do a lot of development work, a lot more testing work, kind of managed production teams, and eventually wound up making my way into tech comms. So that's where I am now. And, most of what I do a lot of XSLT development. I do a little bit of content strategy for the clients that we work with, and I primarily figure out what our clients need and how we can best implement that for them.
Well, talk a little bit about your organization, who you're working for, and what's a day in the life like for Jake?
So I work for Scriptorium Publishing. We've been around for 20 years now, and I actually got over here because a friend of mine worked here a few years previously and introduced me to Sarah, the president and owner of the company. Um, Generally what we do is kind of talk to a wide variety of people, large companies, small companies, sometimes very technical, sometimes more educational in nature. We basically help anybody who needs it, and we can offer that help to them. We're tools agnostic, so we don't resell any kind of software. We don't particularly try and push anyone towards a single solution. We kind of help people figure out what kind of solution is best for them. As far as kind of like a day in the life situations for what we do,
Well,
oh,
let's just kind of focus in on what you're involved in. So what are the kind of tasks that you typically might be working on for a project? I know we're always happy to welcome new professionals into our field. So just give us a little bit of an idea what that's like.
okay. So a lot of the time what I'm doing is taking the requirements that some of my colleagues have put together from our clients and implementing them. And what that means is we generally have some sort of target output that we're looking to get. So whether that's PDF, HTML, or any kind of way that we're processing the data to get what they need. One time I put together a transform that um, took string file input and broke that down into JavaScript data objects that they could load onto a platform so that the display on the unit that we're working on could actually, efficiently retrieve that information for display to the user.
Well, I'm sure you're always learning new things, trying out different things. With anything currently going on that you're particularly passionate about?
So as far as the work side of thing goes, I have a lot of experience working with InDesign. the Adobe desktop publishing platform. And a lot of what my experience is with that is actually going in and using the DITA Open Toolkit to transform DITA into a format that InDesign understands, namely the in-copy markup language, ICML. And users can actually take that ICML file and place it into an InDesign document, and auto-flowing that will take the content that we've transformed and auto-flow it throughout the document to generate a book. That has been my focus on one of the projects that we're working on for probably about 2 years now, and I've actually developed that out a fair amount from where we had it initially.
And what about on maybe the more hobby or personal interest side? You mentioned an aspect of your gaming that you were interested in.
So I'm pretty big into gaming and have been my entire life, but I've recently gotten really big into board games lately, especially some of the more complicated ones, things that go beyond like what a lot of people think of when they're thinking of board games, outside of things like Risk or Trivial Pursuit or that. And one common thing that I've noticed is that a lot of the rule books for these very complicated games are kind of terrible. So a lot of what I focus on as I learn about how we can package information and how we can organize things is how can we take this back and create something that's really useful for people, not only to help them learn something, but also to serve as a useful reference on the fly. Because the first time you're playing any kind of board game, there are inevitably going to be questions. You're going to be picking up that rule book. You're going to be trying to flip through it and, like, okay, does this have an index? No, it doesn't have an index. Okay, table of contents. Okay, part of it is in this section, part of it's in that section. It's just a mess. But a lot of what I focus on is how I might be able to use things like iconography or condensed information or better utilization of things like appendices or indexes to kind of help flesh out a lot of that documentation. And the iconography is actually really important because you can have just like a little symbol that doesn't mean anything at first glance, but once someone understands what that means, that compacts a whole lot of meaning and allows you to really get clear, concise information out that is easy to see, is easy to find, and allows you to really save a whole lot of space in what would otherwise be an extremely crowded manual.
Well, all power to you in bringing TechCom into the documentation for these robust board games. I also wanted to talk to you about your talk at the conference. So you're going to be bringing in some case study information, real-world returns from structured authoring. So tell us a little bit about what we can expect to learn from that.
So I've been working with this client for a while. They have they're a little bit hidebound to the procedures that they put together. And, as the technology ages and as they're trying to move out of desktop publishing to a more structured environment that allows them to be flexible with how they utilize their content, they're running into a lot of stumbling blocks. And I think the thing that really exemplifies what's going on with this is they have a series of product data sheets that they use to kind of serve as warranty proof. So you run down this list, you check everything off, and then that's in triplicate. So there's a really strict set of requirements. There can be a lot of really densely packed information on the page, and it wound up costing a significant amount of money to create this kind of content because they needed to create it in English. And because of the really tight layout issues, they wound up with this really, really dense page. And then they would translate that out to 10, 12, 15 different languages. And just the translation costs alone were astronomical. But we put together a PDF transform for them so that they could store that information in DITA and then transform it out. And then all of the localization would be done on this format that doesn't really require any kind of attention on how the content is laid out on the page. That all comes into play when we take it and put it out in the transform. So just being able to localize like that really saved them a lot of money. And I think that's the kind of thing that really interests me, is because, I mean, comparatively speaking, when we're creating content, it's not, most of the cost isn't really associated with that first draft local run that you're working with. It's getting it to work in all the different localizations that you need it in and making sure that everything still works, especially when you have these really tight requirements like that. So I think it would be really interesting to kind of bring that viewpoint on, not only do you need to think about localization, but you need to think about localization in a very specific way. And when you do that, you can save in time, man hours, any kind of associated production cost with it, that kind of thing.
Well, it sounds like it's going to be an interesting project to hear about in person from you, and it's very it's can be kind of tough to find organizations where they're able to present case studies like that in a public forum, and so I look forward to that at the conference, and I will see you when I get to Raleigh in just a couple of months.
Okay, look forward to it.
All right, thanks a lot, Jake.
All right, no problem.